Hey everyone, for this short lecture, we're going to be talking about emotions. We're going to be talking about the definitions of it, the look and feel, primary mixed ones, experiencing it, coping with it, and a couple different theories. So let's start talking about definitions. So, emotions are feelings we experience in reaction to our surroundings and others. They're powerful forces which help us mark the highs and lows of points of our lives. Emotional intelligence is the ability to motivate oneself or to persist in the face of frustration, to control impulse and delay gratification, and to regulate one's mood. So, for example, if I am screaming and kicking and threw myself on the floor and my hands are going on the floor and I'm kicking my legs, I probably have poor emotional intelligence. And then there's emotional ineptitude. That's the little kid having the tantrum is a great example of emotional ineptitude. It's the inability to handle and control one's emotional responses. We've all had times where we've been emotional, or we've had great emotional intelligence, and probably a few times that we've been pretty inept. But most of the time, we fall in between. There's resilience, and that's the ability to cope and recover quickly from disappointments. Social intelligence is the ability to understand and relate to people. I gotta tell you, I'd love to tell you that I'm great at social intelligence, but sometimes I'm just like Liz Lemon. I'm just like, no, it's okay. Don't be cry, right? I sometimes suck at it. Other times I'm fantastic. I guess it depends on everything else going on. And then there's being emotionally tone deaf. And that means you're unable to listen empathetically. Sometimes we all are tone deaf. We all fall into it sometimes, but certainly I'm sure you know people who are more tone deaf most of the time than probably they should be. So let's get into the look and feel of emotions. So physical expressions, believe it or not, seem to be universal, whether we're talking about, you know, tribes in the Amazon who are untouched by technology, or in Europe, or in Australia, or in New Zealand, or in Asia, wherever it happens to be, all of these places, they tend to be universal. They have certain facial patterns that support the expression of each emotion. And regardless of age, gender, or culture, these kind of tend to evoke similar expressions: surprise, anger, happiness, sadness, and fear. So, for example, I bet you look at this and you can guess what he's feeling. This is where being in class is a little bit more fun because most of you probably said, well, he's mad or he's angry, and you're 100% right. The eyebrows down and together, eyes glare. There's a narrowing of those lips. You got this very small picture of President Obama, and we know what he is. Well, he's happy. He's got those crow's feet wrinkles. He's got the pushed up cheeks and the movement from the muscle that orbits the eye. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, you know exactly what he's feeling here, which is absolute sadness. He's got the drooping upper eyelids, the losing focus in the eyes, and the slight pulling down of the lip corners. What about this one? I can't believe this guy is a Marvel superhero now. Well, this seems a little what? He's surprised, absolutely. His eyebrows are raised, his eyes are widened, and his mouth is open. Here's another one for the Doctor Who fans. What do you think? If you guessed fear, you're 100% right. Eyebrows raised and pulled together. Those upper eyelids are raised, it's tensed lower eyelids, and the lips slightly stretched horizontally back to the ears. I don't know about you, but I don't want any of what he's eating. Am I right? Because that is absolute disgust. Nose wrinkled, upper lip raised. So we've got these emotions that are kind of universal. And then those are kind of like these baseline emotions. And just like when we learned about the primary and mixed color wheel, emotions kind of do the same thing. So primary is like surprise, anger, fear, sadness, disgust, acceptance, anticipation, and joy. But then we've got mixed. And for example, love is a mix of joy and trust. Those are kind of that mix of love. We've got awe, which is fear and surprise. Maybe we have remorse, which is disgust and sadness, or aggression, which is anticipation and anger. So mixed emotions are these mixes of these kind of primary emotions. There is such a thing as emotion contagion, and it's similar to catching a cold. Some people give us moods. For example, if you run into a very, very happy person, they can make us happy. Or sometimes the opposite. If they're sad, suddenly we are very sad as well. So the more we are able to turn into other moods, the more empathetic we are, and something to think about. So we've got these emotions, and of course, there's some emotions that are going to promote effective functioning. They're going to support our well-being, but then there's the other side, and that's the debilitative, and that's going to impede our ability to function effectively. We get mad, we get destructive, we act in ways that tend to get in ways of the development of a healthy relationship or the realization of our goals. For example, what these folks do to that fax machine is not very, well, it's not very functional, but it is just a fax machine, and who needs those anymore, right? So there are a lot of coping emotions and strategies in relationships. For one, you can remove the problem. This is one way that we manage our emotions. We remove the problem. Um, Maybe we go for a run. Well, we're removing ourselves from the problem, right? We are pushing the food away. I'm trying to think of other great times that I'm upset, and they all keep on going back to food. What does that tell you about me, right? You could change the way you interpret a situation. Sometimes I try to take a step back, right? And I have a saying, especially when I'm doing my work in the Navy, I say, is anybody bleeding and is everybody getting paid? And that's kind of my shortcut for, is the safe and health of everybody okay? All right. If that's true, then is everybody getting paid? And what that means is, it's kind of that Monroe's, not Monroe's motivated secrets, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that we have that safety and security, because when we're getting paid, when the money that we're expected comes in, there's a lot of those base foundations that are going to be met, right? That security, that safety, that food, that shelter, right? If we're getting that money on time. And so, I tend to think of those two things right there. So I try to, see things from a different perspective. Try to see things from the student's perspective, or whoever I'm having the conflict with, my sailors or whatnot. And I say, okay, what are they seeing? And if I was in their shoes, would I expect the same thing? Right. We could also assimilate, right? And kind of, decide that they are right and change our own perspective. And sometimes that's an acceptable thing to do too. Since you just watched the conflict lecture, you should understand that that is absolutely part of our management styles. So expressing emotions can be tough for some people, and for some people, it's really easy. So ask yourself this question: which emotions are the easiest to tell another person? I find that being happy for women is a very easy thing to share. I do feel that for most of the men in my life, it's being angry. Being angry is a very easy thing to share. When I'm angry and I'm sharing it, a lot of times I find myself apologizing. I wonder why that is. Anybody else do the same thing? Oh, but not when I'm happy. The hardest things is when I feel I'm at conflict with myself, right? I find that's really hard. Or when I feel like a person has kind of betrayed me, right? Those emotions are really hard for me to share. But what about you? So for our first theory, we're going to talk about attribution theory. And attribution theory is when we try to understand other people and we're attributing feelings, beliefs, or intentions to them. So, for example, you're driving down the road and some guy comes up on your right on the freeway and cuts you off, right? What's the first thing I say? What a jerk, right? And I am trying to understand his behavior by calling him a jerk. I don't say, oh, I wonder if he has a pregnant woman in his car. I don't say, oh my gosh, he must be running late for a very important engagement. I don't think any of that. I think he must be a jerk, right? So we tend to attribute these kind of characteristics to other people in order to better understand them. Oh, well, why did Sally steal Michael's boyfriend? Well, because she's not very nice, because she's, you know, however we want to put it. But let's kind of play this a different way. When we like Sally, we'll say something very different. We'll say, well, Michael and John, or Michael and Judy, or whoever Michael was dating at the time, weren't really getting along, and Sally was there, and she's such a nice person. Can you really blame Judy? Can you really blame James? Right? On the other hand, if we don't like Sally, we got a lot of choice words for her. Am I right? So we determine the reasons for one behavior on our perceptions of how much we of the feelings towards that person. If we like them, we're likely to give them bigger grace. If we don't like them, oh, we got some choice words from them, let me tell you. And I am no exception to that. The second one we're going to just talk about really quickly is the emotional attachment styles. This has gotten very catchy in the last couple months. We're just going to be talking about 3 different attachment styles. The first one is avoidant. Avoidant tends to feel overwhelmed when faced with too much emotion. Perhaps if you hide when you're feeling too much emotion, and think about how that avoidant style can be read by your partner. If I'm feeling overly emotional towards my partner and I go leave the room, my partner may start feeling devalued. There's anxious, which is uncomfortable communicating feelings and always looking for rejection cues from the partner, and a lot of us get like this towards the end of a relationship. When a relationship's about to break up, yeah, we tend to keep our mouths shut more often. And guess what happens when we're not communicating properly? Right? The communication starts to break down, but we're constantly looking for those rejection cues from our partner, and it makes us very anxious. Giving is where I think most of us want to be, and that's where we're secure. We're secure in showing affection and giving affection. We're very comfortable in our own skin, and we're very comfortable with the other person. And we're all of these things all the time, although some of us, especially in the beginning of a relationship, may have different styles that we show more often. So emotional statements, when we're in the mix of this emotion, sometimes it can be really hard to have these kind of conversations and maybe tell somebody, hey, I have a really avoidant emotional style. Not to have any spoilers here. I am watching the latest season of Just Like That, and Miranda recently perhaps started dating somebody who is definitely avoidant attachment style. But what did she do? She was very honest with Miranda. When Miranda kind of confronted her about it and was a little concerned about it, she was maybe a little bit more anxious, Miranda, but Joy is more avoidant. So things that we can do in order to help our communication is to avoid things like use statements. If we need to have these conversations, don't say, you always pull away, right? Say, well, I'm worried that you're pulling away right now, and I don't understand. I'm hoping you can better help me understand if it's something I've done or something's going on in your life. And when we use the I statements, it's more about our perception and our awareness rather than the other person's behavior. And that can help to the conversation and help the communication. So in this pretty short lecture, we talked about emotions. We talked about the look and feel, primary and mixed, experiencing emotions, coping with them, attribution theory, and emotional attachment style. I'll reach out if you have any questions.